Hi coders, this video is on chapter 15 in your book, which is musculoskeletal conditions and diseases. The biggest thing in this chapter is when you are choosing your diagnosis to make sure you choose laterality, which means the side, whether it's right, left, or both. I'm going to go into that in just a second. I want you to look at page 413 in your book. I don't really ask you to memorize stuff, and you don't have to memorize this, but I think you need to put this in your book somewhere where you'll know where it is, because you're going to need to know in multiple cases how many of each type of vertebra there are. So there are 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacrum. Okay, so I would write that somewhere where you know where that is. Okay. As far as your guidelines in your I-10, there are not a whole lot of guidelines. Well, there are a few guidelines in I-10. The biggest thing is about sight and laterality. There are some directions about coding pathological fractures. So remember that a pathological fracture is it's a fracture due to a disease. It's not a traumatic fracture like a fall off a horse, a car accident, something like that. This is where the body has some kind of disease that weakens the bones, and a small bit of force will cause the bone to deteriorate and break. Okay? So the next thing I want to point out, and I don't know that we've talked about this before, is I want to point out a placeholder. So I want you to stop the video, but I want you to turn in your I-10 book to code M01. So look at M01, and then you'll say, it says M01.X. Okay, so anytime that you have something and you don't have a character for it, remember, I-10 codes can be anywhere from 3, has to be a minimum of 3, a maximum of 7. Okay, there are some times that a certain character goes in a certain spot, meaning like the 5th character or 6th character. Okay, but you may not have one before then. So you always have to use what's called the placeholder, which is always as an X. So look at M01.X. Okay, so if you look at M01.X, it is the direct infection of a joint and infectious and parasitic diseases. Okay, look at M01.X1. Okay, so the X11, the 6th character 1, designates right. The 6th character of 2 designates left. Okay, so because you don't have a 4th character, you're going to use the X as the placeholder. Okay, and that's going to be important as we get to some codes further in the chapter. All right, now I want you to pause the video and I want you to go over to M84. So M84 is a disorder of continuity of bone. Okay, and so you'll see M84.3, which is a stress fracture. Okay, so anything with M84.3 has to have 7 characters. Okay, now look right under there where it says stress fracture, it says fatigue fracture, marked fracture, etc. And then it says use additional code for external cause. Then it's got excludes 1, excludes 2, and then after that it says the appropriate 7th character is to be added to each code from subcategory M84.3. Okay, so if you have M84.3, you have to have 7 characters, and the 7th character has to be either A, D, G, K, P, or S. Okay, so they're only going to put that in the I-10 book once. So you have to remember to go back and code that. So if you look at M84.31, it's a stress fracture of the shoulder. So the 6th character tells you which right or left, okay? And then you'll have to add the 7th character to describe if it's an initial, subsequent, etc. If in your homework it doesn't say, then it's probably a safe bet that it's the initial encounter. Okay? So you'll also see that for M84.4. Okay, and you'll notice these all have 6 codes, but like when you get to M84.4, let's say you go to M84.45, and that says 6th, and then you go to M84.451, beside that it has a 7th character. Okay, so it's telling you have to have 7. So when you get to this, and when you get to S codes and T codes with fractures, a lot of them, if not most of them, are going to have a 7th character. Okay, so I wanted to introduce you to the placeholder, and I wanted to introduce you to the 7th character when it talks about initial, subsequent, etc., because you will come across that in multiple chapters.